The stagecoach door slammed open harder than it should have. Evelyn Hart's boot hit dirt before the driver could even yell for the brake. Her eyes darted to the sky, storm black, like something was pushing down from above. One hand tightened around the side rail. The other reached back behind her. "Now," she whispered. Two small shapes scrambled after her, skirts damp from the 3-day ride, faces pinched from holding their breath too long. Lottie hit the ground first, knees buckling. June followed, arms full of a threadbare doll whose face had long since rubbed off. Evelyn yanked them both behind her, just as the coach rocked forward again and the driver jumped down cursing. "I said this drop wasn't safe in this damn wind," Tucker shouted, fighting the reins. "Told you to wait it out in Lampasas? You dropped us," Evelyn said flatly, "which is all that matters." Thunder cracked sideways. The air smelled like rain and horses, and Evelyn's left shoulder still stung from where it had slammed against the coach wall during a sharp turn. But that pain meant nothing, not compared to what might be coming next. A figure stepped out from the porch of the ranch house, tall, broad-shouldered, motionless. Calder Boone didn't move as the sky threatened to split open behind him. He stood with one hand resting on the support post. Gray eyes locked on Evelyn like he was trying to count how many lies she hadn't told yet. She lifted her chin. "Mr. Boone." "Your heart." His voice was flat, quiet. "I was expecting one person." Evelyn didn't answer. He came down the steps slow, boots crunching dry dirt, dust curling around his heels. He stopped 3 paces away. June coughed. Lottie didn't blink. Tucker kicked the trunk out of the coach, and it hit ground with a muffled thud. "You'll want to know," he said to Calder. "She didn't come alone, and she didn't ask me first. I got mouths to answer to if trouble comes through on my wagon." "You got paid?" Calder asked without looking at him. Tucker hesitated. "Yeah." "Then get off my land." The driver raised both hands, spat in the dirt, and climbed back up without another word. The coach turned, wheels groaning, and vanished into the dark ridge of cottonwoods behind the rise. When the sound of hooves faded, Calder exhaled once, slow. "You didn't mention children." "I didn't have a choice," Evelyn said. "We can be gone by tomorrow." "That ain't what I said." "We won't be trouble," she added. Her voice wasn't pleading. It was the kind of calm you held in a courtroom right before the verdict. "They don't speak unless spoken to. I'm not worried about noise." Lightning flashed, and Evelyn caught it, just for a second. The raw scar that cut through Calder's left cheek, not fresh, not clean, like someone had missed and gone too deep. "What are their names?" he asked. She didn't answer right away. "Names?" he repeated. Evelyn touched Lottie's back. "This is Charlotte. She goes by Lottie. And the little one is June." June looked up, face pale. The doll in her arms was missing one button eye, replaced with a stitch. "Are they yours?" "They're in my care." "Not what I asked." "They're mine," Evelyn said, "for as long as I can keep them." A gust of wind ripped across the clearing and flung grit into all their faces. Calder turned toward the house. "Storm'll take the road soon," he said. "Bring the trunk." It weighed more than it should. He noticed that. No spare dresses could make it that heavy. When he glanced back, Evelyn was ushering the girls forward with quiet pressure. The little one tripped once. Lottie steadied her without speaking. At the porch steps, Evelyn paused. Rain started, sparse at first, then fast and mean inside. The house smelled like cedar smoke and old wood. The fire was banked low but catching again. Calder set the trunk down. June sneezed. "You're soaked," he said. "Room's through there. Linens in the chest. Quilts on the bed. We'll only stay the night." "I didn't say that." Evelyn stared at him, searching. Then she nodded once and steered the girls into the side room, closing the door behind them with a soft latch. The silence that followed was different, not peaceful. Just waiting. Calder stood there a long moment before going to the fire. He stirred the coals, fed them pine kindling. Then he sat, shoulders hunched, listening to rain on the roof and faint movement from the room beyond. He didn't want this. Didn't want children in his house. Didn't want the weight of somebody else's secrets pressing against his walls. He'd written that ad clean. One housekeeper, one woman, no baggage. The fire flared. Shadows jumped. Calder got up and crossed to the trunk. He stared at it, then knelt, ran one hand along the worn leather. No lock. He unlatched it. On top, folded clothes. Beneath them, a wrapped bundle of books. Beneath the books, a pistol, 36 caliber Navy Colt, cleaned, oiled, not decorative. He didn't touch it. At the very bottom, wedged into the corner, something hard, metal. Out of place, he shifted the edge of a skirt to see it better. It was a locket, broken open, no chain, inside. One picture cut crooked, as if torn from another. The man in the photo had a mustache and eyes like Lottie's, but next to him, there was a second photo, smaller, stuffed in, not matched to the frame. It was of Evelyn, younger, standing stiffly beside a woman in fine clothes. Someone had tried to ink over part of the woman's face, but not well enough. He closed the trunk, thunder rolled again, closer. Calder turned, walked back to the fire, and poured himself half a mug of bitter coffee from the pot he'd forgotten to dump that morning. He didn't drink it. The bedroom door opened. Evelyn stepped out, dry dress, shield on shoulder. She didn't speak. He nodded toward the fire. They asleep? Trying. You cook. I can. Start tomorrow. 6 a.m. He watched her hands twitch slightly at her sides. Well, stay out of your way, she said. Calder stared at the coals, eyes unfocused. That'd be best. She waited. Then, if someone comes asking. No one's coming. That trunk says different. She stiffened. He didn't press. She left the room. He heard her steps settle in the back, the sound of the girls shifting in quilts, one soft cough, the creak of floorboards giving under tired feet. Then silence again. This house had been quiet for 6 years. He thought he'd wanted it that way. Outside, something thudded. He stood, crossed to the window. At first he saw nothing. Then his eyes adjusted. A single boot print, small, wet, on the porch rail, too far from the edge to be hers, or the girl's. It faced inward. He didn't sleep that night. He kept the fire banked high. The pistol laid beside the lamp, and one eye on the door. In the dark, June's voice came through the wall like a breath. Violet, are we safe now? And Evelyn's voice, soft but certain, for tonight, darling. But we don't exhale yet. He didn't know what the next dawn would bring, but someone had already been here. He's not the only one who found them. The rooster crowed once before dawn, then again, a sharp sound through the wet hush of a land not yet dry from the night storm. Calder Boone was already up. He'd left the lamp burning low and his boots by the door. His rifle stood leaned against the wall, and the mark of the bootprint from last night was still there, faint now, where he'd smeared it with his own heel, trying to make sense of it. He didn't mention it to her. Evelyn was already in the kitchen. She wore a plain brown dress and a gray shawl pinned across her shoulders. Her hair was still damp at the ends, braided neat, looped once to keep it off her back. She moved quietly, not just careful, but practiced, like someone who knew the exact weight of creaking floorboards. She didn't turn when he stepped into the room. I found the coffee, she said. It's old, but serviceable. He grunted and sat at the table. She poured without asking. The tin cup hissed steam in the morning cold. You always up this early? He asked. She nodded. Earlier, sometimes. Depending on the work. He watched her plate bacon into the skillet, hands steady, movements economical. Her knuckles were bruised, old, fading. What happened to your hands? She didn't look back. Carriage door slammed. Day I left San Antonio. He didn't press. But she was lying. He could tell, not in the way her voice sounded. It was smooth as anything, but in how her shoulders locked, like she was waiting to be doubted. Behind the kitchen wall, he heard a soft creak of bed springs, then the quick thud of small feet. They know not to come out until I call them. Evelyn said, I told them you'd need quiet this morning. I don't need anything. Calder muttered. He drank his coffee in silence, but he was listening, always had been. When she slid a plate toward him, he paused. Eggs, crisp bacon, fresh cornbread warmed on the stove edge. The skillet was clean, the table wiped. A cloth hung drying by the basin, even though he hadn't seen her use water. You did all this already. She met his eyes. I don't like waiting around to be judged. He ate half before speaking again. You'll need to learn the house. I'll show you what needs doing. I noticed the root cellar's got standing water. I know, and the back hinge on the coop gate's busted. He raised an eyebrow. She shrugged. What passed it? June noticed. He didn't ask how the 5-year-old had spotted it through fog and dark, just sipped the rest of his coffee and stood. You garden?
Wes!
Weeds have taken the whole thing. Last woman here planted tomatoes. Never saw 'em through. I can fix it. You'll do the washing Mondays and Thursdays. Well's cold, and it stays that way. The line's still good out back, if you don't overload it. Evelyn nodded, absorbing it all. He watched her shoulders again, still tight. She was listening like someone who didn't expect to stay. House has 2 bedrooms, he said. This main one used to be my mother's. Yours now, with the girls. Other one's mine. She hesitated. Thank you. I didn't give it for thanks. She nodded once and moved to clean up. He grabbed his hat from the hook near the door, then paused. I'm out till midday. There's bread and salt pork in the larder. She didn't turn. We'll be fine. He stared at the back of her head a second longer. Then he said, low, like he hadn't meant to speak at all. If someone shows up asking questions, you come find me. No pretending you're not home. Evelyn's hands paused over the wash basin. You don't want trouble. No, he said. But if it's coming, I like to see it first. He left. The air outside was damp but brightening. The sun pushed against cloud like a blade through cloth. The pastures still held pools from last night's downpour. Mud clung to the hooves of the cattle. A few of the hands, Marcus and Jed, had already ridden out to check the western fence line. Sam was walking the far trows. Everything looked normal, but it wasn't. He couldn't shake the boot print, the weight of the trunk, the locket, and something else, the way June had flinched when thunder struck, and Evelyn hadn't. Not even a twitch, like she'd already flinched out everything that could hurt her. At noon, when he returned, the house smelled of soap and rosemary. He stepped inside and stopped cold. The floor was scrubbed clean. The windows had been opened and dried with cloth. The curtains, he hadn't realized how crooked they'd been, were rehung. The fireplace stones were swept, and a thin vase of prairie flowers sat on the mantel like it had always belonged there. Lottie was kneeling by the hearth, brushing the ashpan with a stiff brush. She looked up but didn't speak, just nodded once. June sat in the corner sorting clothespins by color. He spotted Evelyn through the back window, pinning laundry to the line. Her arms moved with a rhythm he remembered from somewhere long ago. Before the war, before he'd gone half silent from carrying too many ghosts. He didn't speak until she returned. You cleaned all this today? I clean when I stay. He crossed his arms. You plan to stay? Evelyn wiped her hands on her apron. That depends. You never answered last night. Didn't ask a question. You didn't send us away either. He said nothing. She sat at the table across from him, face calm. I don't expect charity. I'll earn our keep. And when the next coach comes, I don't have funds for a return fare anymore. That was the moment, the hinge. He could say nothing, let the days pass, let her leave when someone came asking. It'd be clean, legal, solitary again. But Lottie had looked at him that morning like she was already measuring whether he could be counted on, and June had called her Mama. Once, softly, as she reached for a biscuit. Calder exhaled hard through his nose, then said it, quick and flat. You work. You prove you can manage the house and stay out of the way of the men. 2 weeks. Evelyn didn't smile, she just said, fair. There are conditions. Anything. The girls stay on this side of the creek. They don't go into the north pasture. They don't talk to the hands unless spoken to. They follow instructions. They will, and if someone shows up with a name you recognize, any name, I need to know before they step foot on my land. Evelyn nodded, but he saw it. The flicker. She was holding something back, not defiance, fear, the worst kind fear for someone else. He let it sit. 2 weeks. He said again. She stood and gathered the plates, outside. A breeze stirred the laundry. The sunlight broke fully through the clouds. Somewhere out past the barn, a hawk screeched and something small died under its shadow. He watched her work a moment longer, then turned toward the door. Lottie's voice stopped him. She was still kneeling, dustpan in hand. Mr. Boone. He turned. She stood, wiping her palms down her patched dress. Are you really going to let us stay for real? He held her gaze, those eyes, too sharp, too still for a child. For now. he said. Lottie nodded like she was filing that answer away for judgment later. And then she said the line that settled under his skin, long after he'd walked out. If we mess this up, there's nowhere else left. He didn't answer. Didn't need to. But as he stepped into the sunlight, he knew someone was going to test that, and soon, the fence was cut clean through by the south ridge. The mornings came easier now, not soft. Evelyn didn't believe in soft, but steadier. The girls knew their rhythms. June folded her blanket tight and set her boots side by side before Evelyn even knocked. Lottie had taken to rinsing the basin before breakfast without being asked. 3 days into the 2-week trial, the Boone house no longer smelled of damp stone and old smoke. It smelled of bread cooling on a rack and dried sage from the tin jar Evelyn found buried under a sack of flour. The table was scrubbed raw in spots from overcleaning, and the porch had been swept so often it lost its dust quicker than it could gather. But none of that meant they were safe. She could still feel him watching. Calder Boone didn't hover. He wasn't the type. But he knew every sound in that house. If a floorboard creaked wrong, he noticed. If the girls laughed too loud, he looked up from the coral. His silence wasn't empty. It was tight, like a rope pulled taut between one mistake and being turned out for good. "Do you think he's angry today?" June whispered as she rolled her socks. Evelyn paused. She was braiding June's hair and quick, even rose. "I think he's thinking, maybe, about the land too." June nodded slowly. "Then we should be quiet." But it wasn't about volume, not really. Evelyn had spent most of her adult life learning how to be quiet, and that hadn't kept her safe. Either she looked out the kitchen window. Calder was saddling his horse. He didn't knock when he came in, just pushed through the door and said, "Barn's flooded." Evelyn stood, wiping her hands. "I'll get the girls out of the way." He shook his head. "I need help digging a trench." She blinked, surprised. "Me? You said you can work." She glanced toward the hallway. "What about them?" "They come too," he said, already turning back toward the door. "They don't touch nothin'. Just watch." Lottie lit up before she could stop it. June hesitated, then scrambled for her boots. Evelyn grabbed 2 rags and tied them around the girls' necks. "You stay behind me, you hear?" "Yes, ma'am." The trench was half dug already. Calder had worked through the night, judging by the way his shoulders moved, slow and sore. Mud clung to the hem of his shirt and dried in clumps on his sleeves. Evelyn didn't ask, just grabbed a shovel and started in. By the 3rd shovelful, she felt the skin on her palms shift. By the 6th, it tore. She kept going. Beside them, Lottie crouched low, watching how the water pooled against the base of the barn wall. She didn't fidget, didn't speak, just studied. June held the tin water cup in both hands, careful not to spill. The wind picked up. Calder paused, wiped his brow with his sleeve, then looked toward Lottie. "You see the way the mud's pulling?" he asked. Lottie nodded once. "Why?" She pointed. "Too much slope on the far side. It's sliding in before it can drain." He looked at her for a moment longer than necessary. Then, "Come here." Lottie stepped forward, small boots sucking in the mud. He handed her a small hand spade from the saddlebag. "You ever used one?" "No, sir." "Figure it out." Evelyn moved to intervene, but Calder's look stopped her. Lottie studied the handle. It was heavy for her size. She stepped to the wall, tested the edge, then began carving a thin channel away from the puddle line. Her strokes were uneven but smart, angling the blade so the runoff curved rather than flooded. Evelyn watched without speaking. "You teach her that?" Calder asked. "No." "Then she learns fast." He said it like a fact, not a compliment. Still, something in Evelyn's chest eased. Barely. By midday the trench held, and the water began to recede. Calder stood back and surveyed it all. The girls were tired. Evelyn's hands bled where her blisters had opened. She wrapped them without a word. "You didn't stop," he said quietly. "I don't have that luxury." He looked at her then, really looked. Before either could speak, Marcus rode up from the north trail. His horse was sweating, ears back. "You'll want to see this," he said to Calder. "What is it?" "South fence. Wire's not just cut. It's gone. Spools and all." Evelyn's chest tightened. "Gone?" Calder asked. Marcus nodded. "Clean. Like someone knew where to snip, where to haul." No mess. Calder swore under his breath. How long? Could have been last night. Could have been this morning. Evelyn spoke without thinking. Could it be animals? Both men turned. No animal steals fence wire. Calder said. He didn't look angry. He looked old in a way she hadn't seen before, like something he'd buried was clawing its way back up. He turned to Marcus. Ride to town. Tell Keen. You want me to say it out loud. You want them doing it again tomorrow. Marcus hesitated, then nodded and kicked his horse into motion. Calder turned to Evelyn. Keep the girls inside till I get back. Don't answer the door. Evelyn nodded. But as he turned to go, she stepped forward. What happens if they come again? Calder didn't answer. Lottie's voice cut through the silency. If she's this good at 7, what happens when she wants to stay forever? He paused, didn't look back, just mounted and rode. The girls didn't speak much that afternoon. June colored on scraps of paper. Lottie sat near the door, sharpening the small hand spade with a rock until the edge sang. That night, Evelyn lay awake, listening. The wind pushed hard against the shutters. Somewhere in the distance, a single coyote yipped, then went quiet too fast. She rose, pulled the shawl over her shoulders, and walked to the window. The night was clear, but something was missing. It took her a moment to realize what the chickens. They hadn't made a sound since dusk. She stepped out onto the porch barefoot. The coop gate was open, too open, like it had been set that way. She moved closer, slow, careful. And there, just beside the feed barrel, a boot print small, not one of theirs, facing out this time, but beside it, dug half into the mud. A doll's foot, June's, snapped clean off at the ankle. Evelyn didn't scream. She just picked it up, held it tight, and walked back to the house. She didn't sleep. And when morning came, Calder wasn't back yet. By the time the sun crested over the ridge, Evelyn had already scrubbed June's doll clean and stitched a makeshift replacement foot from the hem of an old curtain. The stitches were crooked, her fingers still stiff from yesterday's trench work. But the effort calmed her. June hadn't asked where the doll had been found. She just took it back and held it like it had never left her arms. Calder still hadn't returned. That alone didn't shake Evelyn. She knew men like him kept to their own rhythms, especially when something had gone wrong. But the silence felt thicker now. Not the natural quiet of wide land, but a hush you didn't want to break. Even the wind felt like it held its breath. She kept the girls close that morning. Lottie read aloud from the same dog-eared reader for nearly an hour, while June traced every word with her fingertip. Evelyn hung laundry, watched the ridge line, and kept the rifle, Calder's, leaning behind the door loaded. She hadn't asked, just taken it down from the wall where he left it, like he'd known she'd need it. It was late afternoon when she saw him, riding slow, hat pulled low, his horse moving stiffly like it had been pushed too hard and too long. She stepped out onto the porch as he approached. You're late. Keen made me wait. He dismounted, jaw tight. What'd he say? He'll send someone to look. That's all. Calder nodded. Too little wire missing to file a formal theft. And the boot prints. The coop. The doll. Don't matter. No blood. No name. Just worry. Evelyn crossed her arms. Then we're on our own. Calder looked up at the house. His eyes passed over Lottie's face behind the curtain. We've always been. That evening, Calder sat on the porch, sanding down a broken stirrup. The girls had gone quiet again, like they could sense what the adults didn't say. Evelyn brought out coffee and didn't speak until the sun dropped low. She's watching you now, she said, nodding toward the window. Oh, Lottie. He paused his sanding. She watches the way you walk, how you fix things. She asked me this morning if you always check the fence line yourself. He didn't look up. She's got a sharp eye. She's more than that, Evelyn said. She doesn't trust easy. But when she does, it's deep. Calder was quiet a long while. She reminds me of someone, he said finally. Who? He didn't answer. Instead he stood, brushed the sawdust from his lap, and motioned for her to follow. Evelyn trailed him to the north paddock, where the sick mare stood under the lean-to. She's colicking again, Calder said. I've been treating her, but she's not taking water. Evelyn moved toward the rail slow and even. She's in pain. I know. She need walking. He nodded. But she won't let me near her today. Lottie's voice came from behind them. Can I try? They turned. She stood with her hands clasped behind her back, chin lifted. Calder hesitated. She kicks. Lottie didn't flinch. Let me try. He stepped aside. The girl moved through the gate like she'd been doing it all her life. Not fast. Not timid. Just steady. She walked wide at first, letting the horse see her. Whispered something no one else could hear. The mare twitched but didn't move. Lottie took a step closer, another. She reached out, just her fingertips. Let the mare feel the air around her. No touch yet. Just permission. Then, slow as the wind shifting, the mare lowered her head. Lottie stepped beside her, looped the lead rope gently around her fingers, and began to walk, small feet in big boots. She walked the animal in slow circles, talking all the while in a voice no one interrupted. Calder let out a breath he didn't know he'd held. She yours? He asked. Evelyn smiled faintly. Not by blood. She got ranch in her. She's got survival in her. He watched the way the girl kept the mare moving, gentle, firm, precise. She'd be wasted in a city. Evelyn's smile faded. She won't go back there. A beat of silence passed between them. Then Evelyn said, softer, neither will I. Calder nodded once. Nothing final, nothing promised. Just understood. Lottie brought the mare back, brushed her down like she'd known her a lifetime, and walked back toward the house. She paused at the door and looked back. Calder met her eyes. You did good, he said. Lottie blinked once, then she went inside. Evelyn lingered on the steps. She's starting to hope, she said. That's more dangerous than anything else right now. Calder didn't disagree, but neither did he stop it. That night, Calder lit a lantern and took a ride along the fence line again. Evelyn didn't ask where he was going. She just left the lamp burning low in the window until his silhouette passed through the darkness on the way back. Inside, Lottie and June were asleep. Evelyn sat by the fire, thumbing a book but not reading. He handed her something, a folded page, torn from a registry. From Keene, he said. He had a name. Evelyn opened it. Her hands trembled before she could stop them. The name was familiar, not from her life. From theirs, a man she thought was far gone. One who used to own everything around them. The land, the house, and the girl's mother, and now, apparently, wanted to reclaim something he believed was his. She looked up. He can't find them. Then we need to make this place harder to see. Outside, the wind had picked up, and on the horizon, a strange flicker of light blinked once and vanished. Not lightning, a match, a signal, too far to reach tonight, but closer than yesterday. If she's this good at 7, what happens when she wants to stay forever? That question rang louder now, because somewhere in the dark, a man had begun asking a different one, what's the cost of taking her back? The sound came at dusk, soft at first, like something dragging across gravel, then sharper, measured, a 3-beat knock at the front door. Evelyn froze mid-motion. Her hand wrapped around the kettle's handle. The girls looked up from the hearth, where they were sewing buttons onto a cloth doll. Calder was still out checking the eastern troughs. She wiped her palms on her apron and moved to the window first, lifting one edge of the curtain just an inch. The man was tall. Clean boots, black duster, no horse in sight. That alone meant something. He knocked again, same rhythm. 3 beats, pause, 3 more, behind her. Lottie stood slowly. That's not how people knock. I know. Evelyn stepped back from the window, crossed to the rifle by the wall. She didn't lift it. Yet. Just set it leaning near the door. Close enough, then she opened it, only a crack. The man smiled, polite, dry, snake slick. Evening, ma'am. Sorry to call so late. We don't take visitors. I won't be long. His hat stayed on, his hands were visible, open at his sides. But there was something about the way he stood, balanced, like a man used to being obeyed before he finished speaking. I'm looking for someone, he said. Couple kids. Might have come this way with a woman. Quiet sort. Name of Hart. Evelyn didn't blink. Don't know anyone by that name. The man studied her. Funny thing that. See, I was told she boarded a coach out of San Antonio 3 weeks ago. Eastbound. But then she wasn't on it when it pulled in at Lamphouses. Thought maybe the trail turned her. Could've. He echoed. Could've also meant she was running. with stolen property. Evelyn's grip tightened behind the door. The man leaned forward a hair. Word is, she's got something that doesn't belong to her. Like what? Blood. That word sat heavy between them. The man adjusted his coat. If you happen to see her, ma'am, let her know there are people who'd be real grateful to have her return what's owed. No harm meant. Just balance. Evelyn didn't move. The man tilted his head. You have a nice evening now. He stepped back slow and certain, then walked toward the trees. No horse. Just disappeared into the dusk like he belonged to it. Evelyn shut the door, locked it, bolted it, then turned. June clung to her doll. Lottie's face had gone pale. That man, Lottie said, voice too steady. He's the one Mama hid us from, isn't he? Evelyn nodded once. He's not supposed to know we're here. He does. And he did, because Evelyn had spotted the flicker in the woods just before the knock. The same glint of metal she'd seen from the ridge 2 nights ago. A spyglass. They'd been watched. Calder returned an hour later, rifle slung, mouth tight. He knew something was wrong before she spoke. Evelyn told him everything. Every word, every pause, every detail about the man's face. He didn't interrupt. When she finished, he stared at the fire a long time, then got up, pulled the floorboards in the far corner, and took out a small tin box she hadn't seen before. Inside ammunition, a folded map, one strip of faded cloth that looked like it might have been part of a uniform once. He handed her the box. You still shoot clean. Only when I have to. He might have to. He walked outside, then returned with a bundle of wire, a shovel, and a lantern. I'll be on the ridge tonight, he said. If they're watching, they'll see me. But they won't see the traps. Evelyn watched him. You knew this would come. I knew peace was always temporary. And the girls. He hesitated. Then's, we keep them close. That night, Lottie didn't sleep. Evelyn found her sitting up with a knife under her pillow. You won't need that, she whispered. Yes, I will, Lottie said. If he comes back? Evelyn knelt beside her. You're not alone here. Doesn't matter. Evelyn took the knife gently from her hand. It does now. She placed it on the windowsill. Within reach, didn't scold her, didn't lie. You're smart, she said. But don't let that make you hard. Lottie looked at her. Hard's how we survive. Evelyn touched her cheek, sometimes. But not here, not yet. She stayed by her side until Lottie's breathing slowed, then went to the window. The lantern Calder left at the edge of the ridge was still lit, flickering against the trees. A message, we're awake. We see you. At dawn, the traps were sprung. One of the snares had caught a man's coat, empty, torn at the shoulder, left behind as bait. But it wasn't the coat that made Evelyn's stomach turn. It was what had been pinned to it. A school ribbon, yellow gingham, the same one June had worn 2 weeks ago. The one Evelyn knew she'd sewn into the back of the dresser drawer for safekeeping. Someone had been inside the house. She didn't scream. She just showed Calder. He didn't speak, but when he rode into town that afternoon, he came back with more than supplies. He brought Sheriff Keene, a slow, careful man with eyes that saw more than he let on. The sheriff examined the ribbon, the traps, the path through the woods, then turned to Calder. This is bigger than theft. Calder nodded once. Then you need to tell me everything, Keene said. Calder looked to Evelyn. She folded her arms. No, she said, not yet. Keene's eyes narrowed. Why? Because the law only protects what it recognizes, and the man who's after them. He owns too much. Keene didn't like that answer, but he didn't push. You've got one more day, he said. Then I need something solid. He rode off without a handshake. Evelyn turned to Calder. We can't wait. I'm not. Then what are we doing? Calder looked out at the tree line, then back at her, buying time. That night, Evelyn slept in the front room, rifle by her side, one boot on. She didn't dream, but at 12:14 a.m., she woke, not from sound, from absence. The lantern on the ridge was out, and the wind was blowing inward, toward the house. She rose, crossed to the window, fog, heavy, rolling low across the field like something crawling, and in the center of it, a man standing, watching, close enough to see his outline, too far to shoot without missing, but just near enough for his meaning to land clear. He raised his hand, 2 fingers, then dropped one, held it, dropped the second, then turned and vanished into the mist. Evelyn didn't move for a full minute. Then she stepped back and whispered, "He's not looking for the girls anymore." She turned to the dark room behind her, where the girls slept. She knew the look in that man's gesture. It wasn't about recovery now, it was a countdown, and she was what he meant to collect. By first light, the mist had lifted, but its weight lingered. Evelyn stood at the porch rail, with the rifle resting in her arms. She hadn't slept after the signal. Every muscle in her body buzzed with readiness and dread. The girls were still inside. Lottie curled at the end of the bed like a watchdog. June pressed against her back. Evelyn had left the door open between rooms, just in case. Calder returned at dawn, boots slick with dew and face darker than the sky behind him. "I saw him," she said before he even dismounted. "I knowed," he replied. They didn't need to explain what he meant. He signaled. Calder tied his horse loosely to the hitch. What did it mean? One for each girl. A beat passed. Then Calder said, and then he dropped the second. Evelyn nodded. He didn't ask what that meant. Didn't have to. He's not going to ask again, she said. No. Calder agreed. He's not. They both stared toward the ridge, silent. Then Calder spoke, low. "He's waiting for you to run. That's how he works. Corner pressure, watch what breaks." Evelyn looked up at him. "He's not wrong. I was planning to. Not anymore." Her voice barely carried. "If I run, they'll follow. And if I leave the girls here, he'll take them from behind the law. You trust me that much?" "I don't trust you," she said. "I trust what I've seen of you. And I trust Lottie's face when you walk into a room." Calder looked away, jaw tight. "I've got something," he said, "but it'll make noise." "What kind?" "The kind that gets answers." He opened the saddlebag, pulled out a folded page, a ledger. Smudged with ink and time, Keene slipped it to me. "It's the old ownership record from the orphan lot, where the girl's mother was taken in. There's a transfer in '81, name changed, guardianship reassigned to a man named Reuben Hartwell." Evelyn's lips pressed thin. "Hartwell," she said, "he's not kin. He bought her. Called it adoption, but—" "I know," Calder said. "He's the one hunting now." Calder handed her the ledger. "In that page, there's a mistake. They listed both children as property under guardianship, but no final release filed." Evelyn looked up. "That means—" "It means technically, they're still his, unless you can prove blood or illegal custody." She swallowed hard. "I can't. Then we need to flip the board." He reached into his coat, pulled out something small wrapped in cloth, a brooch, silver, dented. The back etched with initials R.M. Evelyn touched it like it might burn. "I gave this to her," she whispered, right before she stopped, closed her eyes. "Where'd you find it?" "Buried in the saddle of Hartwell's old ranch horse, one that got traded last season." Keene tracked the sale. She stared. "He's covering his tracks. Trying to. But that brooch was reported missing during the trial. He claimed she ran with jewelry. Said she was a thief. She wasn't." Evelyn said. Calder stepped closer. "If we can place this brooch back in his possession after the disappearance, it proves fabrication. But we still can't link the girls legally to her." Calder's eyes flicked toward the window where Lottie stood, silently watching. "You said they never let her register the births." Evelyn nodded. She was alone. No husband. No name to lean on. Calder stepped back. "Then we do it the old way." "What way?" He looked down the road. "The way they hate most. Publicly. Loudly." Evelyn didn't understand, not until noon. He hitched the wagon, sanded the boards, cleaned his boots, and put on the coat he hadn't worn since his father's burial. Evelyn came out with the girls in clean dresses. Hair pinned, faces scrubbed. Calder tipped his hat to them. "We're riding to town." June clapped. Lottie didn't move. Evelyn took Calder aside. "You want him to see us in public?" "Yes! That's bait." "Yes." She held his gaze. "And if the sheriff won't take our side, he won't have to." The wagon rolled into town just after the church bells. Keene was already on the porch of his office, sipping coffee. Calder tipped his hat. Keene raised an eyebrow. "Thought you were laying low." "We're done laying." They passed the mill, the grocer, and the post. Evelyn sat tall, chin up, Girls on either side of her, not hiding. By the time they reached the general store, whispers had started. Calder tied off the reins and walked in, came out with supplies. Flour, lye, kerosene, and handed the clerk a folded paper. "What's that?" Evelyn asked. "A poster." He showed her, missing persons notice, 2 girls, 1 woman, names listed, alias suspected Hart. She filed this in Waco. Calder said, 2 weeks after you disappeared. Evelyn's jaw clenched. He's building a story. I'm going to tear it down. He nailed the poster to the town board, then stepped back, crowd forming. Sheriff Keene stepped closer. "You really want to do this here?" Calder said nothing. Instead, he took out the brooch, held it up. This was reported stolen by Reuben Hartwell, claimed as evidence of theft by a woman who disappeared under his care. Gasps in the crowd. This was found after she vanished, in his possession. And it belonged to her. He looked at Keene. That's a lie. On a legal document, which makes his entire claim invalid. Keene hesitated. It's not proof of custody. No, Calder said. But it's proof of fraud. And fraud voids claim. Silence. Keene looked at Evelyn. You willing to swear on this? I've already done worse for less. Then Calder turned to the crowd. I'll say it plain. These girls stay with me. Anyone wants to dispute that, they do it here. In the open, with their name attached. No one spoke, even the wind held still. Then a voice low, from the edge of the boardwalk. Names can be forged. Everyone turned. Reuben Hartwell stood in the shade of the saloon's overhang, hat in hand, eyes cold. I came for what's mine, he said, and I came to say no. Evelyn answered. Hartwell stepped forward. You think a town board and 1 dead woman's trinket makes you safe? No, Calder said, but it makes you seen. Keene stepped between them. You want a claim, Reuben, file it in Austin, with the court. I don't wait on courts. Then you wait on me, Keene said. Try to take them, and it's kidnapping. You will be shot. Hartwell sneered, but he didn't move. He turned, walked off slow, but not defeated, just delayed. That night, Evelyn stood beside the porch rail. You forced his hand. Calder nodded. He's going to come harder now. Good, he said. Now we know where he's standing. She exhaled, looked at the girls asleep on a blanket under the open window, then said, soft and firm, I'd rather be hunted for telling the truth than safe for staying quiet. Calder looked over. Then we hold our ground. They didn't see the rider in the distance, not yet. But he was coming, and this time he wasn't coming alone. The rider came at twilight, not fast, but deliberate. Close enough to be seen, far enough to keep guessing. Evelyn spotted him from the pasture fence. A thin shape against the last of the sun. She didn't move, just watched until he turned his horse west, and disappeared behind the ridge. Not Hartwell. Not anyone she recognized. But the message was clear. The lines were drawn, and the watchers were shifting. She walked back to the house slow, her boots dragging dust. Inside, the girls were playing with Lottie's patched doll. Its new foot stiff and the wrong color, but still holding. Calder was seated at the table, oiling his rifle. You saw him too, she said. He didn't look up. He wasn't hiding. Then he wanted us to know. Calder nodded. They'll wait for the moon. How many, you think? 2 we can see. More behind. Evelyn sat down across from him. You still think we can outlast this? I think we can make it cost them. She studied him. The way his hands moved, methodical, quiet, preparing for something final. We won't have much warning. We don't need much. Outside, the wind shifted, the kind that rolled low and stayed close to the ground. Dirt wind, battle wind. She stood. We need to move the girls. No, she blinked. No. They're not shadows anymore, Calder said. We'll hide them again. Hartwell wins. Then what do we do? He looked at her. Steady. Certain. We let them choose. Lottie's fingers curled around the rifle butt before she could stop herself. It was too big for her, too heavy, but she didn't flinch. Evelyn knelt beside her. Not yet. Lottie stared at the open window. He'll come through there. No, Evelyn said gently. He'll use someone else first. He's too proud to break the glass himself. June sat nearby, clutching the doll tight, its patched foot peeking from under her hand. Evelyn touched her hair. You remember what I told you about hiding? Don't stay in the first place they'd look, Cow. That's right. Calder entered, arms full, bedrolls, rope, canteens. "I'm setting up a fallback by the creek," he said, "just in case. But if we go there too early, they'll trap us." Evelyn finished, he nodded, then handed the canteens to Lottie. "Fill these. And sharpen that knife you keep under your pillow." Lottie looked up. "You knew about that?" Calder gave her a ghost of a smile. "I sleep light." They spent the rest of the day quiet, moving in patterns that weren't patterns. Sweeping the barn twice, walking the same stretch of fence at different hours, letting boots scuff in places they hadn't stepped. They laid false paths, doubled back, tied bells low on the chicken coop wire. Every sound was a message now, every creak a warning. By nightfall, the house was dark, no lamps, no fire, just 3 breaths in the living room and 1 on the roof. Calder, watching, waiting. The first sound came just past midnight, not a horse, not footsteps, a whistle, long, low, then cut short. Evelyn tensed. She didn't move from her spot beside the girls. Lottie's breathing was shallow but controlled. June trembled, but didn't cry. Then a second whistle, short, high, an answer from the east field. "They're in pairs." Evelyn whispered. She rose, rifle in hand, and moved to the kitchen doorway. She could see nothing. But the dark wasn't empty. It was held by men who thought waiting made them smarter. She clicked her tongue once, soft, a signal, up on the roof. Calder shifted, then a shot, sharp, clean. Someone screamed. A scuffle, footsteps pounding away. Calder's voice low and clear. 1 down. But that wasn't the attack. That was the test. Evelyn pulled the girls tighter. "Now," she said, to the root cellar. Lottie hesitated. "What about you? We follow after." "No," she said. "We go together." Evelyn looked at her, saw the fire, the line that wouldn't bend. She nodded once, then quiet. And fast. They slipped through the floorboard door Evelyn had pried loose that spring. The root cellar was shallow, dirt, packed and cold, lined with shelves of jars that didn't clink because she'd stuffed rags between them weeks ago. Just in case, Lottie bolted the inside latch. They waited. Above, the front door slammed open. Boots, 2 sets, then silence. Someone whispered. Evelyn pressed her palm to the dirt wall. Heard the vibration of steps over the floor. They were moving slow, careful. Then a voice. "I'll make it quick if she comes now." Hartwell. She didn't expect him this soon. "Not first." Then a second voice, higher, younger. "I told you this wasn't the place. You don't get paid to doubt me." More steps. Then a scrape. The loose floorboard. Lottie's hand gripped the knife. Evelyn put her hand over it, shook her head. "Not yet." The floor groaned, then light, a sleever. A hand reached down, then yanked back with a curse. A crack of gunfire from outside. Calder again. Chaos. The board slammed shut. Boots pounded. A shout, a fall. Evelyn unlatched the cellar and rose fast, rifle aimed, smoke in the kitchen. But no one there. She moved fast, checking corners. Then the porch. Calder stood over a body. Bleeding, groaning. Not Hartwell, one of his men, young, barely older than Lottie. Calder looked up. "They're pulling back. For now." She scanned the field. "They'll wait for morning." Calder nodded, then added, "Unless he gets desperate." Evelyn glanced back at the girl stepping into the doorway. Lottie held June's hand, but June was holding something else, a torn piece of cloth, dark blue. Calder saw it. "Where?" June pointed. "By the shelf. Downstairs." Evelyn took it, held it to the light. Blood on the edge, but the odd part, it was marked with the insignia of the Texas State Orphan Commission. She looked at Calder. "What the hell is he doing with this?" Calder's face went hard. "We just found his shield." Later, with the girls asleep again and the wounded man tied in the barn, Evelyn sat on the porch. Calder stood behind her. He had state papers. Calder nodded. "Forged. Good ones. Shields and all. Means Hartwell's deeper than we thought. Means he's got protection." She was quiet a long time, then whispered, "If the law won't stop him, then I have to." Calder didn't argue. He just said, "We make our own rules now." And inside the barn, the captured man began to talk. The man in the barn had a name, but Evelyn didn't ask for it. Names could lie. The fear in his eyes couldn't. They'd tied him to a stall post. Hands behind, legs loose enough to keep the blood flowing. Calder stood nearby, arms folded, quiet, not threatening, just watching. Evelyn knelt in the straw. You blood-on state cloth. She said, Where'd you get it? The man licked his lips. He was young. 20. Maybe, not hardened yet. Hartwell gave it. Why? To Flash. For access. Mine. Evelyn glanced at Calder, then back. So you're not just muscle. No. You're part of the cover. He swallowed. They said it was just a retrieval, no kids involved. They lied. I know that now. She didn't blink. What else did they tell you? The man hesitated. Calder stepped forward slow. The man flinched. They said the woman took something. Something they couldn't lose. What was it? He looked between them, then down. I don't know. Evelyn stood. That's not useful. I swear. He don't tell us much. Just hands us papers and a date. Sometimes a name. Calder asked. What's next? Hartwell's meeting someone. Who? Don't know. But he's nervous. He never used to pace. Evelyn crossed her arms. We're. The man hesitated too long. Calder cocked the hammer on his rifle. The man blurted, Abilene. 4 days from now. Evelyn stilled. That was too far to chase on horseback without abandoning the girls. She turned. Does he know you're captured? The man shook his head. No. Evelyn nodded slowly. Then said, Then you're going to send him a letter. By dawn, the man had written every word she dictated, signed it with a shaky hand, and sealed it with wax Calder poured from an old lantern. It wasn't just a message. It was bait. The contents told Hartwell that Evelyn was planning to flee again, with both girls, and that she'd be riding for the canyon pass by dusk tomorrow. It was a lie, of course, but it was a believable lie, because it was what Hartwell expected. The letter was left with a rail courier, who never asked questions. Calder made sure it went west. Then they waited. The ranch became a trap dressed as a homestead. Evelyn had Calder reinforce the barn doors, reroute the fencing, and dig false pit holes along the side trails. She buried glass just below the soil outside the windows, enough to slice through boots. The girls were moved to the hayloft, hidden beneath a false wall, surrounded by dry feed and a single oil lamp. Lottie knew not to light it unless something broke. Evelyn gave her a flare round and said, Only if you hear me scream. Lottie didn't flinch, just nodded. Calder placed the wounded man, now bandaged and half delirious, on a cot in the shed, where he'd be found if Hartwell's men came first. It all looked rushed, sloppy, like people on the run. That was the idea. Let them think you're scared. They never expect a scared woman to shoot first. That night, Evelyn found Calder outside, sitting on the porch step with his hat in his hands. He didn't look up when she approached. You ever think you'd end up like this? She asked. What? Helping fugitives fight off land barons? No. Choosing people over quiet. He turned the hat slowly in his hands. I was already quiet when I met you, he said. Didn't need more of it. Evelyn sat beside him. After a moment, she said, When this ends, if it ends, you don't owe us anything. Calder glanced over. Don't say that. It's true. Doesn't make it right. Silence. Then he said, almost under his breath, I've fought for less. She looked at him. I'm not asking you to die. I'm not planning to. Good. They sat there until the stars came out, and neither one moved. The next evening, the first sign arrived, a dog mangy, half-starved, limping, but tagged state issue. Calder spotted it sniffing the edge of the coop and chased it off with a rock. Scouting? He said. Evelyn nodded. They're close. She made the girls eat early, then kissed both their foreheads before tucking them behind the hay wall. Lottie looked up. If we hear shots, wait. No matter what. June's lip trembled. Will you come back? Evelyn knelt. Always. She lied with all the love she had, then climbed down and bolted the ladder behind her. They heard the horses just after sunset. 6, maybe 7, not galloping, fanning, looking for movement. Evelyn lit one lamp, set it near the door, sat at the table with her hands visible, cleaning the rifle. Calder was already in the loft above the barn, waiting. The plan was simple: let them enter, let them look, let them believe, then snap shut. The knock came at dark. 3 beats, a pause, then 2 more. Hartwell. Evelyn opened the door slowly. He stood there in a black duster. This time he didn't smile. Where are they? Gone. Liar. Evelyn stepped aside. Look for yourself. Hartwell stepped in. 2 men followed. They fanned out, checking corners, opening drawers, lifting rugs. Nothing, just as planned. Evelyn leaned on the edge of the table. I told them to ride for the pass. Why didn't you go with them? To slow you down. Hartwell turned, stared at her. You think you can bluff me, Evelyn? She tilted her head. You think this is a bluff? Then she kicked the table leg. It dropped a hidden lever. Outside, the barn doors slammed shut. Inside, Calder fired once. High. Warning. The men spun. Hartwell reached for his gun. But Evelyn was faster. She shot the lantern. Darkness exploded. Shouting, Calder dropped down from the loft with a rope in hand. One man went out the window. Another tripped the glass trap, screamed. Evelyn backed into the hallway, reloaded. Hartwell's voice cut through the noise. Bring me the girls. And I'll leave you standing. She shouted back. You won't even leave breathing. Then she turned and ran for the stairs. The fight lasted 6 minutes. When it ended, 2 men lay unconscious. One bled from a leg wound in the chicken yard. Hartwell was gone, slipped into the brush during the fray. Cowards move, but not stupid. He'd be back not tonight, but soon. Calder found Evelyn in the hallway, kneeling with the rifle shaking in her hands. She looked up. He's not done, Calder said. But he's different now. How? He knows we're not prey anymore. She nodded, then rose, went to the barn, climbed the ladder. Found the girls safe. She held them tight, didn't say a word. Below, Calder stepped outside and stared toward the tree line. Hartwell had left something behind, a silver cufflink stamped with a state seal. Evelyn came up behind him, saw it, took it. Proof, she said. Maybe, Calder replied, but not enough. Evelyn looked past the trees, then whispered, we need to make him known. The next move wouldn't be bullets, it would be exposure. Keene read the letter twice, then looked up at Evelyn like he didn't know whether to laugh or curse. You're planning to testify. I'm planning to make sure Hartwell can't hide behind badges and backrooms anymore. They sat in the sheriff's office, morning dust curling through the open window. The streets outside buzzed with market chatter and the hollow clank of wagons, but in here, the air had a different weight, one made of names and papers, and what passed for truth in a place like Abilene. Calder leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed. He hadn't said a word since they walked in. Keene finally sighed. Even if you swear on every page, you've got no legal proof the girls belong to you. They belong to their mother, Evelyn said. And their mother had my name in her will, which was never filed, because she was dead before she could. Keene shook his head. You got brooches, cufflinks, scared hired guns. But that's not court evidence. That's motive. Evelyn leaned forward. Then let it be motive. Let them hear it out loud. Let them see him come try to shut me up. Keene stared at her a long time, then glanced at Calder. You sure about this? I've never been more. The sheriff rubbed his temples. You've got 2 days. Circuit judge is riding through for a land dispute. I can squeeze you in. Evelyn nodded. That's all I need. But Keene wasn't done. You're not walking into a courtroom. Not really. You're walking into a room where half the men owe Hartwell money, and the other half owe him silence. Then I'll speak loud enough for both. Back at the ranch, Calder saddled his horse but didn't mount. He stood there, adjusting the cinch, staring out toward the south ridge. Evelyn stepped up beside him. You don't think this will work? I think it'll work too well. She waited. He kept his voice low. You stand up in front of that judge and say what Hartwell did. You're not just accusing a man. You're gutting a system. Folks who stayed quiet won't stay neutral. You'll make him desperate. Good. Calder met her eyes. Just promise me something. What? If you see a way out, take it. Don't make yourself a martyr for 2 girls who've already lost enough. Evelyn's voice didn't waver. I'm not dying for them, Calder. I'm living for them. He gave a small nod, then handed her the folded poster, the one with her face sketched beside 2 small girls. You're already known. Might as well make it official. Word spread faster than wildfire. By sundown, the town board was crowded. Folks leaned on rails and clustered near windows. A few came out of curiosity. Some came to see if the rumors were true. And a few came to shut her down before she ever opened her mouth. Evelyn stepped up to the low platform outside Keene's office, where the judge had agreed to hear her. Coat buttoned, hands steady, Lottie and June stayed behind the crowd, flanked by Calder and a quiet woman from the church who'd offered to sit with them. The judge, wary and pale, tapped his gavel. Name? Evelyn March. Statement. She took a breath and told them everything. Not just about Hartwell, about the woman he'd taken in, used, erased, about the children left behind, passed like land deeds, about the state documents, forged and flaunted, about the threats whispered behind fences and in church pews, about the brooch, the cufflink, the blood and the lies. And then she said the thing no one expected. I'm not asking for sympathy. I'm asking for memory. Because this didn't start with me, and it won't end with me unless someone holds the line. The judge sat back, no reaction. Then, you claim custody. Less. No paperwork. No, just truth. Silence. Keene stepped forward. I've seen the forged seals. I've seen the evidence. And I've seen what kind of men Hartwell sends when he thinks no one's watching. The judge raised an eyebrow. Then where is this Hartwell? A voice called from the edge of the crowd. Right here. And there he was, clean, calm, smiling, flanked by two men in state-issue coats. The judge's expression didn't change. Mr. Hartwell. You contest the claim? I do. He stepped forward, pulled a document from his coat, signed custody. State witnessed. Filed and stamped. He handed it over. The judge examined the paper. Everything seems in order. Evelyn didn't move, neither did Calder. Hartwell turned to her, voice mild. You always were dramatic. She stared at him, then said, calmly, you always needed the paperwork more than the truth. The judge spoke. This is a civil dispute. Until verified, the children stay in neutral care. No, Evelyn said. It's the law. It's the wrong law. Hartwell smiled. The judge looked between them. I'll reconvene tomorrow. Gavel down, people scattered, some in whispers, some in silence. Evelyn stood alone for a long time. Then Calder stepped beside her. You knew it'd go like this. She nodded. It's not about the verdict. No, it's about who heard. She turned toward the church bell, still ringing, then toward the girls, still watching. This wasn't over. It had just changed shape. The church was empty except for the echo of Evelyn's boots, and the dust motes turning slow in the late morning light. She didn't kneel. She didn't speak. She just stood at the edge of the last pew and stared at the wooden cross above the pulpit. Not for answers, for steadiness. The kind you borrow when your own legs go soft. Outside, the town was preparing for a verdict no one trusted. Hartwell had filed a secondary injunction overnight, something about unlawful harboring and endangerment. Legal noise, delay tactics, but they carried weight in rooms with raised benches and sealed doors. Evelyn heard the creak behind her and turned. Calder stepped in, hat off. Face tight. Sheriff says the judge rode out at dawn. What? He's gone. Back to San Marcos. That was supposed to happen tomorrow. Not anymore. She didn't have to ask why. The answer was Hartwell, or whoever owned the line between law and influence. She swallowed. Where are the girls? With the pastor's wife. Safe for now. Calder walked down the aisle and leaned on the edge of the pew. You were right. She frowned. About what? He held up a small booklet, leather-bound, stamped with an old seal. This ain't just about custody. Evelyn took it, opened the cover. Inside were a list of names, numbers, payments, dates going back 10 years, and stamped beside one entry, Hartwell R. was the name. Delilah March. Her breath caught. That's her. Ledgers don't lie. But they don't scream either. Evelyn flipped through the pages. So many names, so many crossed out. What is this? A buying log, Calder said. Kids. Mostly. Some women. Disguised as guardianship grants. Who had this? Yet the young one. He stole it. Said it made him sick. Evelyn turned the last page. There, at the bottom, was a final entry. JM and LM, contingent, pending transfer. She blinked. Lottie and June. It was never just about revenge, Calder said. It was about closing the loop. Evelyn's voice shook. They're not just proof. They're product. Calder's jaw tightened. You take this to the state. They'll bury it. Then I won't take it to the state. Who then? Evelyn stared at the wall behind the pulpit. They thought this would stay quiet. She tucked the ledger into her coat and walked out. They went to the newspaper office, a narrow building with 2 desks, a printing press, and one man who smelled like ink and coffee grounds. Evelyn laid the ledger on his table. "You want a real story?" The man adjusted his glasses. "Not if it gets me shot." "It will," she said. "But you'll die famous." He looked at the cover, then up at her. "Who are you?" She pointed toward the poster still tacked to his wall, the one with her sketch. "I'm the woman who ran." He blinked, then nodded. "I'll need statements." "You'll get them." "Witnesses?" "I've got a man in my barn who helped transport half of what's in that book." "Will he talk?" "He already has." The printer paused, then pulled a fresh sheet. "Let's burn the ink." By sundown, the first copies were rolling. Keene came by and read the first paragraph, then the 5th. Then he said, "You know what this'll do?" "Yes. People will come. Let them." He folded the page and said, "This is the kind of fire that doesn't go out. It spreads." That night, Evelyn sat on the back porch with a shotgun across her knees, not because she expected Hartwell to strike again, because she knew he would. Calder stood in the doorway behind her. "They'll be coming for you now." "I know. You scared?" "Yes," she said, then added, "But fear's not a reason to stay quiet." He stepped out, sat beside her. They didn't speak for a long time. Then Evelyn whispered, "I think she knew." "Who?" "Delilah. That they'd come for her. That they'd come for the girls. She tried to protect them. She died for it. And you're finishing it." Evelyn looked up at the stars, then down at the page in her lap. The headline read State Secrets and Stolen Names. It was only 1 edition, but it would be enough, she said, quietly. "Now the whole damn world will know." And far off beyond the ridges someone struck a match. They came at dawn, not with torches or guns, but with folded papers and clipped voices. 2 men, both in gray riding coats, dusty but polished. The kind of men who didn't blink when someone blood, but flinched at raised voices, state officials, or pretending to be. Calder met them at the gate, shotgun in plain view. He didn't raise it. Just held it like a walking stick he wasn't quite ready to lean on. One of the men lifted his chin, looking for Evelyn March. "She's not here," Calder said. The man smiled like he'd expected that answer. He pulled a paper from his coat and unfolded it slow. "Summons. State issued. Names match. She's to appear in Austin 5 days from now to answer charges of unlawful custody, obstruction, and publication of confidential materials." Calder took the paper, scanned it. "You got a seal but no signature." The man shrugged. "Sail's enough. Not for me. What can escort her? Or bring the girls instead?" That changed the air. Calder's grip tightened. "You try to take them, you'll bleed before your boot hits the porch." The second man, silent until now, stepped forward. "No one's bleeding today," he said. "We just deliver. The rest's her choice." Calder handed the paper back. "Then deliver this if she goes to Austin. It's not alone. And it's not quiet." The man nodded once, then turned and mounted. Calder didn't watch them leave. He walked straight to the house. Evelyn read the summons without a word. Behind her, Lottie and June were setting the table. Lottie glanced up once, saw the page, and went back to folding napkins that didn't match. Calder stood near the door. "They'll be waiting." Evelyn nodded. "It's bait," she said. "Yeah, means they're scared. Or smart." She folded the summons, tucked it into her coat. "They're counting on me running. So don't." She looked at him. "Ride straight into the trap. You've got the ledger. Witnesses, a sheriff who's half fed up with the state. They won't let me speak. Then shout." She was quiet a long time, then said, "If I disappear on the road, they win. If I show up and get buried under paperwork, they win slower." Calder didn't argue. He just said, "I'll ride with you." "No, you stay with the girls." "Not a chance." She stepped closer. "They need someone who can shoot straight and keep promises." "That's not me, not this time." His voice dropped. "You don't trust yourself to come back." "I trust the fight more than the finish." That was all she said. That night, Evelyn wrote 2 letters, one to Lottie and June, full of things she couldn't say out loud. Not because they were too heavy, but because saying them would make goodbye too real. The other she handed to Keen the next morning. "If I don't make it to Austin, print this." He unfolded it, scanned the lines, and swallowed. "This will burn bridges." "It'll burn the lies holding them up." Keen nodded. "Then let's start stacking matches." The ride was long. She didn't take the main road. She crossed lowland trails, dipped past dry creek beds, cut through fields of switchgrass tall enough to hide a horse. Twice she saw riders in the distance. Both times she dismounted and let them pass like a ghost in the wind. The last day she entered Austin alone, dusty, tired, unarmed. A single envelope in her coat. The city was bigger than she remembered. Or maybe just louder. She moved through it like someone underwater. Seeing everything, feeling little. The courthouse was brick and shadow, heavy doors, heavier eyes. A clerk met her at the threshold. "Evelyn March." "Yes?" "You're expected." They didn't cuff her. That was the trick. Let you think you're free until the door shuts behind you. The room wasn't a courtroom. It was smaller, cleaner, just 3 men in dark coats and 1 empty chair. They motioned her in, no jury, no audience. This wasn't justice. It was management. One man read from a list, allegations, pages of them. She didn't flinch. When he finished, another man said, "You may respond." She stood, pulled the ledger from her coat, laid it on the table. "Everything I've said is in there. Names, dates, payments, lies." They didn't touch it. She waited. One of them finally asked, "What do you want?" She looked at each of them, then said, "I want you to admit that children aren't property, that guardianship isn't for sale, and that what you call law is just a fence around a secret." Silence. Then one man stood. "This hearing is adjourned pending review." No questions, no verdict, no promise of safety. They walked out and left her sitting there with nothing but her coat and a heartbeat too loud in her ears. When she stepped outside, the sky had turned gray heavy. She walked 3 blocks before she realized she was being followed. Not state men, not riders, locals, a woman, an old man, a boy holding a printed page. Her story, the ink still fresh. They didn't say anything, but their eyes said enough. She wasn't alone anymore, and neither was the truth. The knock came just before nightfall. Calder had been oiling the hinges on the barn door, more to quiet his nerves than the metal, when he heard it. 3 slow raps, close together. He set the rag down and walked toward the house, every step sharper than the last. The front porch creaked under his boots. He opened the door with the shotgun already in hand. Keen stood there alone, hat off, face pale. And not from the ride. Calder didn't ask, just stepped aside. Keen entered slow, took the nearest chair like his knees wouldn't hold otherwise. Dust coated his coat sleeves, and his hands were shaking too slightly for him to notice. Calder finally said, "She didn't make it." Keen looked up. "She made it." Pause. But they didn't let her leave. He laid it out flat on the table, a folded copy of the Abilene Ledger with Evelyn's picture burned into the middle column. Below a T. Omen desapiers after status iraya itnss rise, cujustuens. Lottie entered halfway through the sentence. June stood behind her, clutching the doorframe. Keen's voice dropped. She testified. Not just about Hartwell, but the whole chain. Every name she'd collected. She laid it out in front of the committee like kindling. And then? Calder asked. Then they recessed. That was 2 days ago. I waited, stayed in town. When she didn't show at the boarding house, I asked questions. Clerk said she left by the back. No record after that. Lottie spoke, voice quiet but sharp. She wouldn't run. No, Keen said. She wouldn't. Calder stepped back. What aren't you saying? Keen looked at the girls, then at Calder. They're going to call it self-exile. Maybe hysteria. Maybe guilt. But they'll spin it. Make her into a warning. Calder's eyes didn't blink. Is she dead? I don't know. Lottie moved toward the table and picked up the paper. Her voice didn't shake. She's not. Calder said nothing. Just turned to the door. That night, he rode alone. No plan, no route. Just the shape of a woman he couldn't forget, and a fire behind his ribs that wouldn't go out. He crossed 3 counties by morning, asking at every depot, every outpost. No one had seen her, but the paper had. The story was spreading, first in whispers, then in print, then in full voices behind closed saloon doors. And it wasn't just Evelyn they were talking about. It was names, systems. The shape of the machine she'd cracked open with nothing but truth and breath. By the time he made it to San Marcos, the courthouse was surrounded, not by protesters, by watchers, people with folded arms and eyes that had seen too many broken promises. They weren't loud, but they were there. And in the middle of them, taped to the side of the door, was a flyer, a harbal mus an awar arent pedaravubao. Calder stared at it, then turned toward the west. Back at the ranch, Lottie found the second letter tucked under her pillow. She opened it with shaking fingers, June peeking over her shoulder. It was short, written in Evelyn's rough, unpretty hand. If you're reading this, they didn't want me back. That doesn't mean I'm gone. It means I've gone beyond them. Stay steady. Stay sharp, and whatever they tell you, don't believe silence is safety. Lottie folded the page, looked up at June. We finish it. The next morning, Keene returned with 6 copies of the Austin paper, all with the same front page headline, Nuits desipiprs tet offiels dninvolvmnt. But the damage was done. The ledger was printed, photographed, circulated, names blacked out, then revealed, testimonies appearing in letters signed by men who once kept their heads down, and behind it all, her story, one woman, no title, no badge, but a voice. And now the country had heard it. Some called her traitor, some called her saint, but no one called her wrong. Calder rode back into town 3 days later, face covered in dust and eyes red from wind. He didn't speak, just handed Keene a folded handkerchief. Inside was a silver hairpin, simple, bent, still warm. Keene asked, South Ridge. At the tree line. Was she there? No, but she left it. Calder nodded. She wanted us to know. Keene looked out toward the horizon. She's not done. Calder's voice was quiet. She's just gone where they can't follow. The storm didn't break until late. All day the air had held a wrong kind of still. Too thick, too quiet. Even the chickens moved slow. Heads low, like they knew the sky was planning something. Lottie stood at the porch rail, eyes fixed on the west, where the clouds stacked like soldiers. Keene arrived just before the first rumble, soaked and panting. A telegram crumpled in his hand. Calder met him at the gate. Rifle slung but loaded. You rode through that? Calder asked. Didn't have time to wait it out. He handed over the slip of paper. Calder read it once, then again. What is this? Official record. Printed through a side channel. A clerk in Austin sent it to me. What changed? Keene looked up, rain dripping from his hat brim. The state is opening an internal tribunal. Off the books. 3 names already under review. One of them's Hartwell. Calder blinked. He's alive? Alive and hiding. Someone's protecting him. But the leaks are spreading. That ledger's making the rounds through more than newspapers now. Then why send this here? Because Evelyn was right. This story doesn't end in Austin. Calder stepped back. Lottie stood behind him now, silent but alert. Keene nodded toward her. She's going to have to speak. Calder hesitated. She's just a kid. She's the only one who knows what he did to them, what he said, what he threatened. Lottie stepped forward. I'll say it. Keene crouched slightly, meeting her eye. This won't be like before. No porch crowd, no friendly judge. They'll ask hard. Try to twist your words. Lottie nodded. I don't care. I want them to hear everything. June gripped her sister's hand tight. Calder looked between them. Then at the storm rolling closer. He said quietly, then we ride at first light. Before they can change the locks again. The trip to the depot was quiet. No one spoke. The storm broke behind them, dragging rain across the flatland like a sheet of nails. But the road ahead stayed dry. Wind whipped and raw. They reached the station by mid-morning. It was small, 2 benches, a faded flag, one clerk with more ink on his sleeves than paper on his desk. Calder bought the tickets without using names. Lottie kept her back to the platform. June sat close, humming something tuneless under her breath. Keene stood off to the side, eyes scanning every rider, every shape that moved. Then a voice, too loud, too familiar. No, ain't this something? Calder turned. Hartwell, hat low, coat dry. As if the storm had passed around him, 2 men flanked him, neither wearing a badge. But they didn't need one. The way they stood said they knew what force felt like. Calder stepped in front of the girls. Keen raised a hand. "You've got no right here." Hartwell smiled. "I've got every right." "You think printing her story made her clean, made her legal?" He turned his eyes on Lottie. "You were stolen property. And that ledger, full of fairy tales." Lottie stepped out from behind Calder. Her voice didn't shake. "I remember what you said." Hartwell's smile faltered. "I remember the cellar. The belt. The way you made Mama cry through the wall." Calder placed a hand on her shoulder, but she didn't stop. "You made her lie on paper. You made her sign things she couldn't read." Keen pulled the folded tribunal notice from his coat. "This girl's a protected witness. You lay a hand on her, the state gets its hands bloody." Hartwell's voice dropped. "You think the state cares about girls like her?" And that's when Calder spoke, low, cold. "They care now. They didn't fight, not then, not with eyes on them, not with papers moving faster than fists ever could." Hartwell walked away, but not far, not gone. Calder watched until he disappeared down the line of trees behind the depot. Keen exhaled. "They'll come for him." Lottie looked up. "They better." The train came late, steel and smoke, and something like hope riding behind it. Lottie and June boarded first, hands tight. Calder stayed on the platform, Keen beside him. "She's ready," Keen said. "She shouldn't have to be." "But she is." Calder nodded once, then handed Keen a slip of folded paper. "What's this?" "A list." "Of what?" "Every man I knew who looked the other way." Keen took it without a word. The train whistled. Lottie leaned out the window, hair whipping in the wind. Calder met her eyes, and for the first time since Evelyn disappeared, he saw something that looked like steadiness, not peace, but purpose. He raised a hand. She nodded once, then said, "Clear enough to carry." "If they want silence, they picked the wrong girl." And the train pulled away. The hearing took place in a cold, windowless room somewhere behind the Austin courthouse. No spectators, no press, just a narrow table, 3 state officers, and Lottie in a stiff wool dress too big in the shoulders. She didn't look small. She looked ready. June sat beside her, legs swinging off the chair, clutching the hem of her sister's coat like an anchor. Keen was across the room, back straight, silent unless needed. Lottie gave her statement clearly, no theatrics, no trembling. She told them about the nights with no light, the rules that changed without warning, the silence forced on her mother, and the threat that always sat heavy in Hartwell's voice. Then she told them about Evelyn, how she showed up with nothing but a name and a question, how she stayed, how she never once told them to be brave, just showed them what it looked like. One of the officers asked, "Do you understand what perjury means?" Lottie looked him in the eye. "I understand what truth means." He didn't ask again. Outside the courthouse, rain tapped the windows like someone trying to remember a song. Calder waited on the steps, not pacing, just still. When the door opened and Keen walked out first, Calder knew, not a win, not yet. But something had shifted. Lottie followed, June still close. Keen said, "The committee's recommending full guardianship transfer to Evelyn March." Calder didn't answer. Lottie stepped forward. "She's not here to take it." Calder met her eyes. "No," he said. "But she already did." They walked together down the courthouse steps, out into the gray morning, and something in the air felt different, not clean, but clearer. Weeks passed, then months. Evelyn didn't return. But the story didn't die. The newspapers tried to move on, but letters kept arriving. Women wrote in names, dates, memories they'd locked in basements of their own hearts. A teacher in Waco opened a locked drawer. A clerk in San Antonio mailed a copy of a forged stamp she'd been told to ignore. The ledger had lit a match, and people were beginning to see the smoke. One day, a package arrived at Keen's office, no return address, inside a brooch, tarnished, familiar, and a folded map with a small red X drawn just west of the Pecos River. Keen took it to Calder without a word. Calder didn't speak either. He just looked at the brooch in his palm for a long time, then folded the map and placed it in his coat. The ranch grew quieter that summer, not from absence, from steadiness. June started school. Lottie helped Keen file depositions on the weekends. Calder built a second water truck behind the barn, just in case. He said no one talked much about Evelyn, but she was everywhere. In the girl's stubbornness, in the way Keene refused to leave things half-written, in the way Calder watched the horizon like it might someday bring something back. Then one evening, as the sun dropped behind the cottonwoods, Lottie sat on the porch steps, a pencil in one hand, a journal in the other. She wasn't writing names. She was writing hers, for once not as a witness, just as a girl, living. June came out with a cup of water and sat beside her. "Are we safe now?" she asked. Lottie thought for a while before answering no. "But we're seen." June didn't fully understand, but she nodded like she did, and that was enough. In a town 100 miles west, a woman with a crooked wrist and a sun-creased face stood behind a counter, watching the postman carry off a letter. No name on the return. Just a stamp, a simple hand-drawn pin. She smiled, and went back to her work. Some stories end with justice, some with revenge, but this one ended with voice, with a woman who refused silence, even when it cost her everything. With a girl who stood in a room of men and told them to listen. And with the quiet understanding that what was broken might never be fixed. But it could be named, that sometimes naming the hurt was the first kind of healing, and that truth, once spoken out loud, doesn't vanish, it echoes,